She didn't buy the place for what was buried beneath it. For 24-year-old Elena Morrow, the condemned factory on the edge of Briar Falls wasn't a dream. It was a last-ditch effort to prove she could stand on her own. Her father called it a mistake. The realtor called it a liability, but Elena called it freedom. She had no idea that under layers of dust, rusted chains, and forgotten silence, something was waiting, something locked away for decades, and still pulsing. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode goes even deeper into mysteries long buried. The factory didn't look haunted, just tired. It stood on the edge of town like a boxer after too many rounds, windows punched out, bricks sagging at the edges. A concrete husk from the war era, abandoned by everyone except rumors. Locals said the last people to own it were federal, but no one could remember what they were working on. Most didn't care, just another rusting body on the outskirts of Briar Falls. But Elena Morrow cared. She stepped out of her rust-orange pickup just after sunrise, holding a key with a broken tag and a folded deed in her back pocket. The town clerk had smiled too wide when he handed them to her. "Good luck, kid," he'd said, like a dare. Her boots hit gravel as she approached the front doors still sealed with a rusted padlock. She didn't flinch. She'd seen worse locks at junkyards. It took 2 whacks with a crowbar, and 1 twist of the key before the chain clattered to the ground. Dust bloomed like breath as she shoved the doors open. Inside, the place smelled like ash and engine oil. Not fresh old, settled, like someone had lit a match 50 years ago and let the memory smolder. Light streamed through cracked panes high above, cutting through shadows like searchlights. The space was massive. At least 30,000 square feet of open floor, cracked concrete, busted chains hanging from the rafters. Machines lined the edges. Lathes, compressors, presses all silent and seized in rust. She ran her hand across one and flakes came off like dead skin. "This is it," she whispered to herself, setting down her duffel. She'd bought the place for pennies. Literally $1,750, auctioned as is by the state after years of disuse. No one wanted it. Not the township, not the banks, not even the scrap haulers. Elena did, because it had space, and space was something she never had enough of. Not in her trailer, not in her old job, not in her life. The plan was simple. Turn it into a garage, a real one. Not just oil changes and tire rotations. She wanted to build things here. Rebuild herself here. She set up camp that first day, on a makeshift workbench near the back wall. Her toolbox, a thermos of bad coffee, and a folding chair. She swept until her arms ached. Pulled tarp after tarp off rusted machinery. She didn't care how long it would take. What she didn't see, not that day, was the faint outline in the center of the floor. A perfect rectangle in the concrete, 12 feet wide, lined with steel and dust. She didn't see it. Not yet, but the factory did. And it had been waiting a long time. 3 days later, Elena was ankle-deep in dust, breathing through a bandana, and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd cleared out about 30% of the factory, enough to see the bones of it, enough to realize how much had been stripped over the years. Copper wiring gone, plumbing rotted, roof questionable, but the silence was hers. And that meant something. She worked alone, mostly. That was her way. But on the 4th morning, she got help. Miguel Dominguez was 62, retired, and stubborn in the kind of way only ex-welders could be. He lived 2 blocks down and showed up with a broom, uninvited. "Figured you could use a hand," he said, squinting at the sky through a broken window. "And I get bored." Elena hesitated, then nodded. He didn't talk much, just swept. They found the hatch on Friday. Elena had been prying up a strip of cracked floor to check for moisture rot. Miguel was off to the side, patching in light fixtures. She hit something metal, not pipe flat, broad. Her crowbar bounced. She knelt down, brushed the debris away, and stared. It was a seam. 4 feet by 12, sunk into the concrete. Reinforced steel around the edges, with a thin black line of corrosion where something had once sealed it shut. The strangest part wasn't the hatch itself. It was what was written across the frame. Property of U.S. DOMS. Sublevel. Access a 17. Miguel leaned in beside her. Domse? He muttered. That's not a name. No, Elena said slowly. It's an acronym. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. The metal hatch was warm to the touch. Too warm, given how cold the factory had been. The letters were engraved into the frame. Not painted. Precise. Government grade. Miguel stepped back and rubbed his jaw. I worked this town 40 years. Welded in every plant from here to the quarry. Ain't never heard of DOMS. Elena traced the seam with her gloved hand. It didn't have a handle. No bolts. Just a single recessed keyhole in the top right corner, so worn it looked melted. She could smell something now, too. Not chemical. Not natural. Almost like ozone. Maybe it's nothing, she said, but her voice didn't believe it. Maybe it's something they didn't want remembered, Miguel replied. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the hatch, the heat radiating from it. The name, DOMS. She searched every online archive she could find, federal registries, military databases, acronyms, decommissioned agencies. Nothing. It was like it didn't exist, but someone had gone to a lot of trouble to bury it, to seal it. And now she'd found it. She returned to the factory just past midnight, flashlight in one hand, keys in the other. The hatch didn't move, but when her light hit it, for just a second, she swore she saw something flicker beneath the seam. A pulse of gold like lightning caught in metal, and then it was gone. By the following morning, the hatch was all Elena could think about. She didn't tell Miguel she'd come back overnight. Didn't tell anyone. But her mind replayed that flash, the golden light pulsing beneath the steel like it was alive. She told herself it was a trick of the flashlight, or dust in her eyes. But it didn't feel like a trick. It felt like a warning. Elena spent most of Saturday clearing the rest of the floor around the hatch. She peeled back old mats, stripped away cracked resin. Beneath it all, she found things that didn't belong. Bolt heads welded flush into the concrete, strange loops of scorched wiring, and a patch of floor that vibrated when she stood on it too long. Subtle, like standing on a speaker with the volume barely turned up. But it was there. That afternoon she visited the Briar Falls Library, a place she hadn't stepped foot in since high school. The librarian, Ruth, still remembered her. You were the kid always asking about rocket fuel recipes, she said with a smirk. Elena smiled politely, but her voice was flat when she asked, Do we have any records on the old Dunridge steel plant? Ruth looked up. That place you just bought? Elena nodded. Ruth frowned and motioned for her to follow. They ended up in the archive room, a dusty tomb of brittle manila folders and reels of microfiche. Ruth pulled a single file from the bottom of a metal drawer. This is all that's left, she said. Inside were 4 documents. 2 blueprints dated 1947, 1 invoice from the Department of Energy, and 1 yellowed envelope marked DOMS, Project Echo. Elena's heart stumbled. She opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a memo, typed in blocky font, Project Echo status. Confidential. Sublevel access, a 17 complete. Containment successful. Memory lattice, stable. Final transmission, uploaded. Shutdown authorized. Seal all entry. No civilian contact permitted. It was dated the 12th of August, 1973. She looked at Ruth. Ever heard of DOMS? Ruth shook her head. Nope. Sounds military. Elena didn't reply. She took a photo of the memo and slipped it back. By the time she got back to the factory, twilight was falling. Miguel was gone for the day, but he'd left the bay lights on. They hummed gently above the hatch. She stood over it, the photo open on her phone, the words, Memory lattice stable, running laps in her head. What the hell had they built down there? She crouched and pressed her ear to the steel. Silence. Then, not silence. A sound. Faint, like whispering. but metallic. Her breath hitched. She wasn't alone down there, and whatever was sealed below wasn't asleep. It was listening. The next morning, Elena showed up at the factory before the Sunday. She didn't make coffee, didn't even brush the dust from her jacket. She went straight to the hatch, and this time, she brought tools. The steel surface was cold now. No warmth, no pulse, no whispering, just metal. But she knew better. Something down there had responded. She could feel it in her chest, not fear, not exactly. Curiosity, sharpened into instinct. She set her gear down and ran her hand along the rim of the hatch again. The recessed keyhole wasn't standard, not circular, not square. It was an elongated slot, almost like a magnetic reader. No rust inside. That was strange. After all these years, it should have corroded over, but the edges were still sharp, like it had been opened not too long ago. Miguel arrived just after 7, carrying a box of shop towels and a coffee for her. "You sleep here now?" he joked. "I found something," she said, too serious to play along. He stepped beside her. She showed him the keyhole, the memo. He didn't laugh. "You sure you want to mess with this?" "No," Elena said, "but I'm going to." They spent the next 2 hours trying everything: lockpicks, magnets, even a USB key rigged to read contact points. Nothing worked. The hatch remained sealed, like it was daring her. It wasn't until Miguel brushed away another layer of soot on the steel that they saw it barely etched along the corner, hidden beneath grime. Vertical bar. 0, 0, 1, 1. 1, 0, 1, 0. 1, 1, 0, 0. To 0, 0, 0, 0. 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. 1, 1, 1, 0. Binary. Elena stared at it. The pattern it made. 4 sets, split by colons. She took a photo. Later, on her laptop, she fed it through a decryption algorithm. The output stunned her. Chain code authenticator. DOMS level A. Status: dormant. Override. Authorized if sequence match confirmed. Chain code. Not just a lock. A sequence. A digital handshake, some kind of identification protocol far beyond a simple key. The binary wasn't decoration. It was a signal. She rewired one of her old diagnostic tablets, looped in a signal emulator, and programmed the binary as a boot-up handshake. The tablet's screen glitched once, then stabilized. A soft chime. And then, the hatch clicked. Not loudly. Just a subtle shift in pressure, the kind you feel more than hear. Elena and Miguel stood frozen. Then, slowly, she reached for the edge. Her gloved fingers slipped into the narrow seam. With a grunt, she pulled. The hatch creaked open. A gust of air spilled out, not foul, not fresh. Dry. Electric. Below them, a steel stairwell spiraling downward, lit by thin yellow strips embedded in the walls. Still glowing. "How is there still power?" Miguel asked, voice low. "I don't know," Elena whispered. She grabbed a flashlight and began to descend, step by step, into something no one was supposed to find. The air grew colder with every step. Elena counted 23 stairs before the light changed. Up top, the glow had been a dull amber, the kind you'd expect from decades-old bulbs fighting to stay alive. But down here, beneath the threshold of the factory, it shifted cleaner, brighter, fluorescent, and steady. No one had changed a bulb in 50 years, yet the lights still burned. Miguel stayed at the top, reluctantly. He said he'd hold the hatch open, just in case. But Elena knew he was afraid, and that was okay. She was afraid too. The stairwell narrowed, then opened into a corridor. Metallic walls, sterile white, lined with conduit. It reminded her of photos from old missile silos. But this wasn't military. Not in the traditional sense. No insignia. No markings. Except one. On the far wall, a painted circle faded but intact. A symbol that looked like a wireframe human skull surrounded by radio waves. Underneath it, stenciled in red, DOMS. Echo Sector. 1973. She kept walking, the corridor angled downward, gently, like it was guiding her. She passed through 2 security doors, both already unlatched. Their locking systems were disabled, wires coiled out like guts from a severed throat. Someone had been here, but not recently. The dust patterns told her that. And then she found it. The hallway ended in a vast underground chamber, 3 stories tall, shaped like an inverted dome. Catwalks ringed the perimeter, and in the center stood a single glass-walled room, octagonal, suspended slightly above the floor by thick metal pylons. Inside that room, something pulsed. Elena moved closer, boots echoing softly. The chamber had a reverence to it, like a sanctuary built for science instead of faith. On the glass walls were etched letters: Echo Core, Memory Capture, and Lattice Node Alpha. She circled the room, peering inside. Tables, terminals, dusty screens, tubes running into the floor like veins, and in the middle, a chair. Not a normal one. It was half medical, half mechanical, with a crown of wires dangling above it. Beneath the chair, a small console blinked. Still powered, still alive. She reached for the door handle. It opened with a hiss. Inside, the silence was thicker. Elena stepped onto the platform cautiously. Her breath fogged the glass for a second, and then cleared. She approached the console. A small sticker read, Core Log Access, E. Morrow, Level 4 Clearance. She froze. Morrow, her last name. She tapped the screen. A menu appeared, glitching, but readable. Audio logs, 47 of them. She selected the first. A burst of static. Then a voice. This is Echo Node Alpha, Day 1. Initiated by Dr. Elena Morrow, Project Lead. Lattice connection established. Early response promising. Subject compatibility. Stronger than expected. Elena's blood turned to ice. The voice wasn't just familiar. It sounded exactly like her. Elena stood frozen, the voice still echoing softly from the console's tiny speaker. It wasn't just similar. It was her voice. The tone, the cadence, even the faint hitch when saying, stronger than expected. She leaned in, heart pounding, and played the next audio file. Day 4. Echo interface is syncing. Faster than we predicted. Subject memories manifest in vivid patterns. Emotional recall is too strong. The lattice absorbs not just data, but grief, rage, joy. It's rewriting its own structure around what we feel. Elena's throat tightened. She sat down in the strange chair, barely breathing. Her fingers hovered above the playback keys. Then she pressed log 07. Day 19. Full sync. Core recognizes tone signatures. We've achieved temporal echoes, past and future emotions stored simultaneously. This is no longer just memory. This is resonance. She stopped the log. The word resonance clung to her like a wet sheet. Her eyes flicked to the console keyboard. A prompt blinked. Resume last session? Y, divided by N. She hesitated. Why? She whispered. The room shifted. Softly at first, like a low vibration crawling up her spine, then a sound layered voices murmuring over each other. Not loud, not clear, but real. They weren't coming from the speakers. They were in the room, suspended in the air like smoke from a candle. And then, like turning a dial, one voice rose above the others. If you're hearing this, you broke the seal. Elena's breath caught. The voice was hers again, older, tired, worn like a leather strap pulled too tight. My name is Elena Morrow. This facility was shut down in 1973 after our final echo test exceeded safe thresholds. I was the last one in. The last one left. Static flared. Then the voice returned. I don't know how long the seal will hold. I encoded everything into the core. My memories, my failures. You'll see them eventually. The system responds to bloodline. If you're here, you're me. Elena stood up so fast, the chair screeched against the floor. She backed away from the console. The files. The voice. The way the system recognized her name. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a loop. A design. Something stirred beneath her feet. A faint rumble. The lattice core in the center of the room blinked once. A soft amber pulse like a slow heartbeat. Then again. Faster. "Stop," she whispered, not sure who she was speaking to. The room? The machine? Herself? The console went black. Then one final line of text appeared. Echo protocol reactivated. "Welcome back, Elena." The lights dimmed, without warning. For a breathless second, Elena thought the power had failed. But the glow returned. Softer now, like candlelight underwater. The console remained dark, the voice logs silent. But something else had turned on. In the center of the room, where the cables twisted beneath the metal flooring, a second hatch opened, circular, iris style, like a camera lens dilating. From within, a faint blue glow rose, and with it, a slow mechanical hum, like a turbine winding up from sleep. She walked toward it, cautiously, the air around her humming with static. The floor lowered 2 inches beneath her boots. Then she saw it. The engine. It wasn't a motor or generator, not exactly. It looked more like a living sculpture. Dozens of thin, transparent plates hovered vertically in a cylinder, suspended midair by magnetics or something far more advanced. Between them, shimmered threads of light flickering, dancing images maybe, or memories. The lattice. She reached out instinctively, and as her fingers approached, one of the plates shifted, revealing a scene so personal it made her stumble back. Her 7th birthday. She was sitting cross-legged in a driveway, cake in her lap, face smeared with frosting. Her dad, silent, half absent, stood in the background, arms crossed, distracted. Her mother wasn't there. She never was. Elena hadn't thought about that moment in years. The memory vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by another. She was 14, standing in a school hallway, fists clenched. The principal's voice echoed. "You've got your mother's temper, Elena." Another shift. 19, sitting in a hospital waiting room, wringing her hands as the words "Stage 4" were spoken. The engine wasn't showing her random clips. It was mining her. Deep, cutting straight into her emotions. Not just memory, emotional charge. Her grief, her fear, her anger, and then like ice water down her spine she understood. This was the engine. The heart of Project Echo. A memory collector, yes, but more than that. A storage device for emotion, an archive of identity. A machine designed not to read data, but human experience. And if her voice was in the original logs, Elsie Morrow hadn't just worked on the project. She'd fed it. Elena stumbled back, heart racing. Behind her, the console blinked on again. New text. Lattice response index. 88%. Emotional confluence detected. Suggested action. Merge. She whispered aloud. Merge with what? And then, on the glass wall, something appeared. Not a reflection. Not a glitch. A face. Hers. But older. Gaunt. Lined with worry. Eyes full of something between sorrow and surrender. It stared back at her from the lattice like a ghost caught in a mirror. And then, it smiled. The next morning, Elena didn't unlock the factory right away. She sat in her truck for almost an hour, staring at the building like it might breathe. Part of her wanted to walk away to board up the hatch and pretend she hadn't heard that voice, hadn't seen her own face smiling through the lattice. But the other part, the one that had always kept her hands busy and her heart buried beneath work, refused. She stepped inside. The hatch was still open. Miguel wasn't there yet. That was fine. She wasn't sure what she'd even tell him anymore. Elena made it halfway across the floor when she noticed the shadow. It shifted against the far wall just slightly. Subtle. Like someone moving behind a curtain. Her hand tightened around the crowbar she kept by the stairs. Hello? No answer. She walked slow, eyes scanning, then stopped cold. A man stood by the far wall, just inside the broken fence line that used to separate the upper catwalk from the main floor. He wasn't old, maybe late 50s, but his clothes looked government. Worn boots, dark jacket, hair combed tight like he never unlearned discipline. He didn't move. "You're trespassing," Elena said, masking the tremble in her voice. "I don't think I am," he replied quietly. "Not anymore." She stepped forward. "Who are you?" He reached into his coat. She flinched, but he only pulled out a small folder, yellowed and brittle, held it out. Elena didn't take it. He placed it on a crate between them. "I've been watching this site since 1981, he said, voice low and precise. "When they shut it down, we were told to monitor for disturbances, light anomalies, seismic readings, electromagnetic pulses." "You with Domps?" she asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Domps was shut down 2 months after Echo went dark. Nobody wanted to carry that name anymore. "Then who are you?" He looked at her carefully. "I'm someone who made a mistake. I helped seal this place, when I should have destroyed it." Elena's hands went cold. "She's still down there," he said, almost to himself. "Elsie?" She swallowed hard. "She's me." "No," he said, softer now. "She's what made you." He took a step closer, cautious, like approaching a wounded animal. "Echo wasn't just about memory," he said. "It was about imprinting, building from the deepest, most powerful pieces of someone's identity. Regret, love, guilt. When Elsie knew the project was doomed, she encoded her mind into the core." He nodded toward the hatch. "And then, she disappeared. Body never found. But the system, it never powered down. It waited for a resonance match." Elena felt her knees weaken. "You're not a copy," he said. "You're her continuation." She looked up at him, voice barely a whisper. "What am I supposed to do?" He exhaled. "Finish what she started." Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table, with the folder the man had left behind, its cover brittle, stamped with a faded red triangle. Inside were documents she wasn't sure she wanted to read. Schematics, psychological evaluations, dozens of photographs, some blurry, some shockingly clear, of the echo chamber in operation. The machine had once been crowded with white coats and clipboards, a hive of minds trying to trap something that was never meant to be held. At the very bottom was a black and white photo of a woman seated in the echo chair. Elsie Morrow, same jawline, same furrow in the brow, but older, wiser, tired. Elena stared at her own face, in a life she'd never lived. Below the photo was a handwritten note. "Memory is not meant to be perfect. It's meant to evolve. If you've found this, you're the last chance to get it right. Don't follow my path. Finish your own." Elena read it again, and again, until the ink blurred. By dawn, she was back in the factory. Miguel met her by the hatch, worry in his eyes. "He came back, didn't he?" She nodded. "He's not the enemy. He's a warning." He stared down into the glowing stairwell. "So what now?" Elena took a breath. "I need to go back in. Not to shut it down. Not yet." Miguel hesitated. "You're sure about that?" "No," she said honestly. "But I don't think it matters anymore. I was built for this." He handed her a light, but didn't follow this time. She descended alone. The echo chamber was waiting. Same hum, same low light, same presence in the air, like something watching, but not with malice, just hope. She sat in the chair. It adjusted to her body automatically, as if it remembered. The lattice pulsed gently, then sharpened. Memories began to shimmer, not hers this time, Elsie's. She saw childhood, a mother lost too soon, a mind that never stopped asking questions, a brilliance dismissed in too many rooms until someone finally said, "We'll fund it." She saw the first tests. Rats. Then volunteers. Then herself. She saw the moment the machine worked, not recorded, but felt. The exact taste of her father's last words. The terror of watching her own anger build a neural feedback loop that almost destroyed her. Then the moment she made the decision, If they were going to shut it down, she would give it a heart, a soul, a second chance. She built Elena, not flesh, not clone, not copy, a legacy written in bone and grit and fire. And then, silence. The lattice dimmed, and a new prompt appeared. Proceed with core transfer? Elena stared at it. She could feel it, all of it waiting to surge into her. Every echo, every weight. But then she remembered the letter. Don't follow my path. Finish your own. She leaned forward, typed in one word, no, and the machine paused. For a long moment, the whole room seemed to wait. Then, slowly, the lattice turned gold and began to rewrite itself. The glow didn't stop. It pulsed gently from the lattice core, no longer cold or clinical, but warm, alive. Elena stood there in the echo chamber, watching as the plates rotated on their own. Each one shimmered with new colors. Not memory, not exactly. Possibility. The system had accepted her choice, not to absorb the past, but to guide the future. The interface flickered again. A final message blinked on the screen. Echo protocol rewritten. Lattice no longer seeking replication. Continuity preserved. Legacy authenticated. Elena exhaled. Somewhere deep in her chest, something she hadn't known was clenched. Finally let go. She left the chamber slowly, one hand trailing along the metal railing. The stairwell above still hummed softly. When she emerged, Miguel was waiting. You okay? He asked. She looked at him for a long time before answering. Yeah, I think I finally am. He didn't press for details, just nodded. They sealed the hatch together that evening. Not with concrete, not with steel. With a custom-welded frame and a biometric lock, one that only opened for her now. Not to bury the past, but to protect what had been transformed. She didn't tell the town everything, only that the factory held more than she expected. She didn't need fame, she needed focus. Over the next few weeks, Elena worked. Harder than ever. But different now. Clearer. She stopped trying to prove herself. She just was. The garage opened officially in September. She named it Echo Works. Not because of what was beneath the floor, but because of what it meant to carry something forward. To build, not just restore. People came. Old mechanics. Curious teens. Ex-soldiers with machines they couldn't part with. They didn't just want repairs. They wanted stories kept alive. And Elena had become the keeper. She taught Miguel's grandson how to sandblast a chassis. Helped a widow finish rebuilding her husband's last bike. She didn't talk much about what happened below. But those who worked beside her felt it like there was something sacred in the shop air now. Something electric and soft. One afternoon she drove out to the edge of town to the last address on the file the man had left. A simple house behind a chain-link fence. He met her at the gate. I knew you'd come, he said. She handed him a sealed envelope. This belongs to Domps, or what's left of it. He took it, nodded. Before she turned to leave, he said, You were never a mistake. You were the correction. Elena drove home in silence. That night, she returned to the shop alone. The lights dimmed, tools quiet. She walked to the hatch, pressed her hand to the biometric pad. It blinked green. She didn't open it, didn't need to. The legacy wasn't down there anymore. It was in her hands now. And maybe that was always the point, not to become someone else's echo, but to choose what kind of voice she wanted to leave behind.